Jason Collette joins myself and Todd Zola for the Bold Predictions cast. Hope you'll join us. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We are brought to you by WinBet. Clay Link here with Todd Zola and special guests on this Friday, Jason Collette. Jason, always a pleasure to talk with you, man. Thanks for carving out some time on your Friday.
Yeah, happy long weekend for those who celebrate Monday as a day off, which is I'm looking forward to it. It's been a grind the last few weeks.
I haven't normally had that off, but I remember seeing that now that we are GDC owned. We do have Monday off as a holiday. Well, really great for you to come by. We are going to be talking about your Bold Predictions series. Great stuff. You just wrapped that up with the NL West. RotoWire.com/try to get 10 days on us. No credit card required. You can check out all 6 editions of Jason's 2022 Bold Predictions series. Do you want to preface this convo at all, Jason? Talk about what you've done over the years, maybe how your approach has changed.
Well, he's going to guarantee all these to happen, right?
Yeah, that's why we had him on the show, to offer his personal guarantee that these will all come to fruition.
That's right. Yeah, just hit up Clay if none of them work. Yeah, I mean, really, I think this is year 8 that I've done these. It used to be I would pick, I think 10 hitters and 10 pitchers. Then I started doing a few per team, and then I decided, you know what? I think over the last 4 years, it's been 1 hitter and 1 pitcher that I've decided to go with on it, and then it allows me to kind of outline or explain why I believe a guy is going to take a step forward or take a step back compared to what the general market feeling is for him. So I try to keep it within the realm of possibility. Like, I'm not going to be out there saying Stephen Piscotty is winning the MVP, even though I took him in the 50th round of my DC. It's just that's what was there in the 50th round. But I want to make things possible and look at some of those opportunities. And sometimes they blow up right away due to injury or the guy doesn't make the roster. Because, again, I'm doing these in December and January and sometimes, bleeding into early February. But I sat down and put all the 60 names down back in December. And this week we published the NL West. So now all 30 hitters and 30 pitchers are all out there. You can use them against me. You can use it, remind me later on in the season I was an idiot, or come back and thank me later, say, wow, you really put me on that guy. I had no idea, that guy was going to do that. But I really feel good about coming off last year. I think last year was one of the better years that I had with some of the hit rates on these, and hopefully can repeat that this year.
Absolutely. I wanted to start kind of in reverse order. So we'll start with the NL West that just went up this week. And then as we progress to our conversation today on the podcast, we'll work our way back. And I wanted to start mostly with the NL West because you kind of shook me to my core with this Mookie Betts bold prediction. I wasn't expecting that on Wednesday morning when I woke up. Kind of took me aback. But you made a really strong argument. And this is where these can be really helpful, is maybe you don't hit on all these, or, they're bold. So maybe the hit rate isn't super high, but it could maybe open your eyes to certain things about certain players that you didn't know before. And that was the case with Betts. I didn't realize the troubling trends with him, and just how much things have just how far back this trend has has dated. I didn't realize, Jason.
Well, and I want to credit my friend Jason Hanselman for pointing me in this direction, because he does a really good job of creating a lot of rolling graphs, and he tweeted something back out as I was sitting down to work on my list, and just saying, hey, wow, his exact wording was, this is less than ideal for Mookie Betts since 2018. And he showed this rolling trend graph. You're like, wow. Now, to be fair, the problem in 2018, Mookie Betts was like amazing, elite, 100th percentile, amazing. You can't go anywhere but down from there. And that's really what it came down to. But I dove into it, just looking over the past 4 years with it. And I added my own kind of bar graph that shows where things are trending. So he's gone from elite, amazing, 100th percentile down to still a really good ball player. I'm not out here besmirching him, saying he's not good anymore. But we have the stuff coming down. We have the hip that twice put him on the IL last year. And that he didn't have surgery on. Towards the end of the season, he had a second cortisone shot. that helped him out on that. So he was running around. He's probably feeling really good. I've had a couple of cortisone shots, and my shoulder felt amazing. And then a couple of months later, I'm having surgery on it. So who knows? But with the hip, they moved him to second base. They tried a couple of different things, but every year, early in the early rounds, you're trying to mitigate your risk because you're not going to get value in those rounds. You're just hoping that you can get as much as what's projected. And we look back every year at guys that are like, wow, what happened to this guy? He was a first round bust, second round bust. And, Betts, you could see it. And if we come back this time next year and look like what happened to Mookie Betts, we could be having that conversation. We could also be having wow, how did Mookie Betts fall into the 20s? Because his ADP has been hanging around like 18, 19. And like, how has he slipped? I'll tell you, I picked 15th in a DC and never even considered taking him on the turn. That's just where I stood after doing my own research on this. Resisting doing my own research, not taking a shot. Joke, but I said it anyhow. That's where I was. I was like, I'm gonna let somebody else take that risk. I picked 15th. I went Walker Buehler, Brandon Woodruff. I went pocket aces out of the 15th spot, and I think Betts went a couple of picks later.
I tweeted earlier this week that in this article you made a case against drafting Betts, and I didn't like the wording of it because you don't say don't take him, but you're just nowhere close. Because as you say, he can still be a really good player, but getting back to that elite level he was at is tough for any player in any sport, but especially with a guy who's had this hip issue. Todd, how are you feeling about Mookie?
Not as good as I was 5 minutes ago. To me, it's all about. I mean, the rolling average. He's had some nicky neck injuries. It's that bone spur. He didn't have it removed. I just don't know enough. Is it still there? And it's in a non-harm or non-painful spot? Is it going to move again? I don't know enough about it. That's what concerns me because I had him pegged as a value player versus the ADP just because he like you say, he still is a good player. But you had me on the exit velocity curious about, I'm all about the fly ball exit velocity, and that has dipped considerably from his heyday. In 2018 it was 96, and then 94 it was 92.5 this past season, and the commensurate fly ball distance is falling. So that is a concern. Performance and injury, just how much they tie together.
Yeah, to be clear, the bold prediction for Mookie Betts from Jason Collette was Mookie is not a top 60 player. So again, nowhere close on him this year. Doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player by any means, but Jason sounds like he's hands off and makes a lot of really good points. So again, check out his NL West bold predictions article. On the other side of the coin, you do like a pitcher to boom for this Dodgers team. Do you want to reveal who that is?
Yeah, and this goes back to when we were in Arizona back in October at the First Pitch Arizona, and we got sitting in the back talking with Jeff Erickson. Like, hey, I was talking with Jeff about I had a good year overall last year, and he's like, probably one of these years where like you had Robbie Ray in a bunch of places, right? I'm like, I had him in one. I had him in AL Tout. It's the only place I had him. And then we started talking about like who would be this year's Robbie Ray, and I was like, well, let's talk about who Robbie Ray is. He's a guy that had one good year. He's always had good. He's done other things really well, but never in the same season. And then he put it all together last year. And so I wrote down Andrew Heaney because there's a lot of the same the home runs, the splits, the times through the order. It really lined up well, and I wrote it out in full towards the end of October. So if you go into the column archive, you can see that. But that's what I said that back then. I'm not running away from that now. Todd, we were talking in the chat of our current DC about, get your guys, like who are my guys. And Heaney is somebody that I've picked up in each of the reserves of the DCs, either a DC 50 or a draft champion. I've picked up Heaney in the reserves in each one of those. So he's still going in the reserves. And if he becomes Robbie Ray this year, yay me. If he becomes Andrew Heaney again, it's a reserve pick. Who cares?
Well, you're not the only. I think it's chapter 2 of the 2022 so-called expert handbook. You have to make that comparison. Maybe they picked it up off of you, Jason, but I've heard that's kind of a common narrative that Andrew Heaney is this year's Robbie Ray. So we'll see. I I think he has a shot to be improved, but man, well, that's why it's a bold prediction, right? To say he's better isn't really all that bold.
Yeah, and I would say that with looking at Ray, like last year, I remember coming out of AL Labor, and Ian was super excited about getting Robbie Ray at $4, and I just remember talking with him afterwards, saying, I never should have let you had him for $4 because I am a believer in Ray, but I thought that price was cheap, and I let it go. So then at town, I spent $8 to get Ray on my roster. I forgot who I was bidding. Maybe one of you two for that. But I was like, okay, I'm not going to repeat that mistake and let him go cheaply. And so I had him in tout. But that's really what made me take another look at it and say, okay, you got to remove bias, because I didn't like Ray at all going into Labor. But when Ian told me, hey, I'm in on him, and then went back and looked and said, okay, we had the 2 different deliveries. If you recall, that was a big deal. He started the season in 2020 with the shorter arm circle, and then he fell back into bad habits. He came to Toronto. They reworked him. He found some more velocity. So in hindsight, should have looked at some things to say, hey, so we'll see what the Dodgers do with Heaney now that he's in camp. Now that eventually he'll be in camp, but now that they have their hands on him, to see what they can do with him. But again, it's reserve pick. I'm not saying like run out there and make him your SP3. I'm hoping that's where he can get to. But right now, the fact that I can still get him in the reserve rounds of every DC that I've done so far is nice.
One thing I really like about Heaney too is that he's got all of New York against him. He went to the Yankees and just turned that entire fan base against him. So you got like all of the New York market.
He can do a Sonny Gray,
Exactly. The entire New York market's crossed him off their list.
Yeah.
So you can maybe get him cheap throughout draft season. Now, elsewhere in the NL West, Jason, I like your call on Josh Rojas. Your bold prediction there was that he's a top 150 overall player. Top 50 would be real bold, but top 150 is still pretty bold. I had him on my board in my queue, actually, in this first pitch Arizona speakers draft we're doing. Took Brandon Crawford over him and had some immediate regrets, and then Ray Murphy took Josh Rojas later in that round. So what in particular do you like about Rojas?
I like the fact that he's going to hit high in the lineup. This time last year, there was a lot of talk about him. He had a really good spring, got off to a nice start, and then slowed down a little bit before a second half spike got him back in a good place. But he's supposed to hit high in that lineup, and that's really where it counts, because when you look at the platoon splits of a David Peralta or the inexperience of a Dalton Varsho, I can't imagine either of those guys is going to take the lead off. But Rojas currently is projected to lead off in that, so he's going to have all the opportunities. He's got that positional flexibility, which is certainly nice with him as well. But the offensive potential's there. He's got the athleticism to have a really nice year, setting the table for that rebuilding offense, if you will. It's not a great offense on paper. But I like his chances up at the top, and ADP wise, he's still sitting. When I wrote this, he's still outside the top 220. So for a leadoff hitter, if he's going to stay in that role, get all those plate appearances up there, he's got a very nice chance of outperforming his projections.
I have him at 180 right now, so the leap to 150 is what, 3 steals or something like that, right? So or 3 more steals. Very, I think that's a nice. My Stratomatic team hopes you're right, because I have him on there, but we'll see.
Jason, for your pitcher for Arizona, you like Corbin Martin to earn a positive dollar value. He's pretty deep down there, and we got a lot to get to. So unless you have anything more to add on Corbin Martin, we can move
He's
on.
in my queue in our DC. I'm just telling you guys that now. He's in the queue.
Okay.
So,
Round
but yeah,
30,
in all seriousness, though, remember, he was like the key point of the Zach Greinke trade. And he was hurt. He had Tommy John surgery 3 weeks before that trade. We're now 2+ years. He had the surgery in July of 19. So we're out of that 2-year window that I like to talk about, where I don't want guys until they're 2 full years out of that surgery. He's out of that window. So you look at the numbers last year, and he couldn't throw strikes. Gave up too many home runs, 12 home runs in 43 innings. But go back and look at what he did prior to the injury and the scouting reports. I'm willing to take another chance on him. I believe that the Diamondbacks will eventually here at some point this year as well. It certainly has the opportunity on that staff.
Now on to Colorado. I had Elias Diaz in my queue, like I had Josh Rojas in my queue. Missed out on him, but it was my own call because I made a choice and took Alejandro Kirk over him. I was looking at the projections. I was like, man, these are really nice on Kirk, and they're only like in 89, 90 games. So I just saw a little bit more upside. But you like Elias Diaz to maybe be a top 7 catcher.
Oh, that one hurt too, because I towards the end of the 17th round, I took Nathaniel Lowe. And thinking that Elias Diaz will make it back to me. I'll take him at 18-3. Nope. That's where no, I take that back. I'm sorry. I took Andrew Heaney at 18-13, thinking Diaz would make it back to me at 19-3. And then Ray and Brent took Diaz there at the end of the 18th. So I moved to Danny Jansen with the next guy. But with Diaz, Colorado just gave him a 3-year contract extension. They're invested in him. You look at what he did. They were reworking a swing. He got off to a horrendous start. Was hitting like $120, and I had him in a few places last year too. But then he gets into June and he got on a nice heater and was able to carry that through. You look what he did the rest of the season, really above average numbers for what he was able to do. And so he should get a majority of that playing time and be able. And he hits to all fields. I just really like him as an offensive-minded catcher, and he got better defensively last year too. And I was rather angry when I was like, you know what, I likely would have been able to get Heaney at 19-3, but that's where I kind of zoned in when I said earlier that I was taking Heaney at the reserves. I forgot that we got him here in the 15 rounder, that I took Heaney at the end of the 18th. So that's where I had the blinders on, thinking I want this year's Robbie Ray, and I missed out on the catcher that I really wanted, because I would have had Varsho and Diaz as my catcher duo. And that would have been really nice. I've never had a really good catching duo in any league, and that's got the potential to be really nice in a 15-team league. And so now it's Varsho and Jansen.
It's not bad, though. I could see that. But, yeah, Diaz would be a significant upgrade over Danny Jansen. I liked him when he was in Pittsburgh, and now he's got the Coors Field boost. So, yeah, I like that call on Diaz. And do you have a deep pull for maybe a surprise saves leader in Colorado?
I rarely repeat guys in these predictions, but I went back to the Robert Stevenson this year on this, because he showed things, and I put some stuff in the article. When you look at that current bullpen situation, it's not like Carlos Estevez or Daniel Bard has a solid lockdown on that job. You look at the skills, and Stevenson's skills line up with them and exceed them in some areas between those three. So I put a table together saying, look, here's what you're dealing with. Now, we've been here before with this team. There was one particular year, I'm trying to remember the reliever. It was when Jake McGee was falling apart. I'm trying to remember Diaz. I forgot the guy's first name, but Diaz was the reliever, and it didn't pan out, and they ended up giving the job to somebody else, and it worked. But I remember getting Daniel Bard on the cheap out of the same thing. But Colorado has never been slow to change closers if somebody's not performing. And when you look at the skills of those three, I really like Stevenson, particularly at the price. I took him in the 27th round of our league here, only because I didn't do a great job of getting closers in this league. I have Lou Trevino as one of my closers, and the aforementioned Jake McGee. I'm hoping that Kepler goes back to giving saves to a bunch of places instead of settling on one particular guy. And so I decided I was going to spend some of my reserve picks throwing darts at some relievers. Took Jorge Alcala, have Kyle Finnegan, and then I also grabbed Robert Stevenson. So I've got 3 relievers. I'm hoping one of those sticks, or maybe multiple sticks, if either of those other guys fail, that I have behind Will Smith.
Nice. Todd, how are you doing, by the way?
I'm still working. I'm still checking out Diaz. No, I'm going to let Jason talk today. I don't want to. Not looking for sympathy, but I got a toothache, so I'm it's all good.
Who was that Diaz? It's driving me nuts. I can't remember that guy's first name.
Jumbo.
That wasn't Jumbo. That wasn't it.
Gyro. Was it Gyro or Humbo?
Yes, that's who it was.
Okay, yeah,
that's who it was.
But as far as the catcher, he doesn't hit the ball. I like the hit tool. I like the contact. But even in Coors, he just doesn't hit the ball with enough authority to take advantage of the altitude. So 7th, that's a little bit high for me. But I do think he's a very solid catcher.
Yeah, Elias Diaz, I'm with you there. Now, Luis Campusano down the list of catcher. He's a guy that I, even leagues where I've needed another catcher, I just kind of don't pay him much mind. I just kind of scan by his name and don't really think about him much. But you like Luis Campusano, Jason?
For the price, I mean, the ADP he's still outside the top 550, and when you look at that franchise historically, they have looked at defense first. I mean, they carried Austin Hedges as long as they possibly could. They had a similar guy in Francisco Mejia, but they traded him to Tampa Bay. So this is really what Campusano reminds me of is more of the Mejia model. But this club has relied upon defense for so long, and eventually they got to get some offense from the plate. It's still going to be Austin Nola's job as a primary catcher, and they've got Victor Caratini because Yu Darvish likes throwing to him. They've got Jorge Alfaro on the roster as a two-position guy, and so I don't believe that Campusano is going to make the roster coming out of camp. But I don't care. I can look at him in the reserve rounds in a deeper league and get that because there's so much turnover at the catcher position. But this is a guy that has offensive abilities and again improving at the plate, and so. In a deeper league, he'd be somebody I'd be looking at the reserve, so I don't have to spend the fab on him. If you can get him in a seventh round of like a 15-team mixed league, you can get him in the seventh round of the reserves. It's a nice option to have, or it's your first cut depending on if you have any injury issues. But you don't need to take him he's not going to make the team starting out, but he's definitely somebody I want to put on my watch list.
Nice. That one's bold. And then you follow up with maybe the least bold prediction. I mean, I'm not trying to, dog you at all on this, but Yu Darvish as a top 20 pitcher doesn't seem all that far out of the realm of possibility to me. And you didn't end up with him in this first pitch Arizona speakers draft, but it sounds like you expect to end up with quite a bit of Yu Darvish.
Yeah, I'd like to. And he was, he's the 40th pitcher off the board right now, but most of the market conversation I've heard with him is fading him because he's had the issues with the command. He's had issues with home runs. And like, I believe there's another good year. Like he had some outlier statistics, particularly with guys on base. And maybe he shouldn't be pitching to Victor Caratini as his caddy, if not. But that's so. I want to believe he has another good year into him. I mentioned him, and I've said this line a couple of times. Like he's one of four guys that had really good stats as far as strikeout rate, batting average against. Whip, it's just the ERA was inflated, and the other guys in that mix are Aaron Nola and Tristan McKenzie and Logan Gilbert, and everybody pretty much loves those guys. Like if you were to put those four together, I could see some folks saying Darvish is the fourth of that group because there are a lot of people that really love McKenzie as well. But those are the four guys that had great surface stats, but just a terrible ERA. And if we're going to be like, oh, Logan Gilbert's taking this big step forward this year, and McKenzie's taking this big step forward this year, and Aaron Nola is an ace or an SP2, how are we going to dump on Yu Darvish just because he's had a couple of years of some up and down skills after coming off his injury? So I'm giving him another chance.
I am 23rd, so that's not much of a reach. Yeah, I like that.
Nice. Well, elsewhere to wrap things up in that division, the NL West, you also like a bounce back year from Evan Longoria. Then you but you view Camilo Duvall as finishing outside the top 20 in saves. So he seems like he's kind of been falling, and I imagine people will listen to you and he'll fall even further. So the walks with Duvall, and
that's the thing, because you look back, it's like he looked electric in September, and he was great down. I mean, he won 4 games and saved 3 other games in a matter of 4 weeks down the season. So like he was a pennant winner for some folks that you're able to pick him up late in that capacity. But the walk historically throughout the minor leagues, he has had troubles with walks. This is Gabe Kepler as well. And this time last year, it was all about the never trust Kepler, never Gabe Kepler, because you never know what he's going to do. And then he went out and gave Jake McGee 31 saves. I think McGee was 31 of 34, and Rogers got 13 saves. And historically, Kepler, the only year he gave saves to one guy primarily was 2019 with Hector Neris, had 28 and the next guy had 3. But that year kind of reminded me that was the year following, Sir Anthony Dominguez had 16 saves and 18, comes into the 19 as a prohibitive favorite, loses the job rather quickly, and then Neris kept it the rest of the year. And so, like I said earlier, I took McGee in our AFL Writers League because I needed saves, and I refused to believe that Kepler is just going to take a guy to 31 saves and be like, you're just a leverage guy now. Go work in the 7th inning. and he's going to hand the ball over to a rookie that historically has had trouble throwing strikes.
Well, before we move on to the AL West, we'll throw to a quick word from our sponsors. And now we are back on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by WinBet. Clay Link here with Todd Zola and Jason Collette, making our way through the bold prediction series up at rotowire.com, rotowire.com/try to check out a free 10-day trial on us. No credit card required. We've only made it through one division through about a third of the show, so I'm going to try to just power through these pretty quickly, Jason. But I heard on our show on XM, Jeff Erickson say this week that he just doesn't have Alex Bregman as like a priority, not like a must get. And I'm kind of feel the same way, just not a priority right now in drafts. But you like Bregman to once again reach top 50 status.
I do. He was hurt. I mean, the wrist was a problem, and it's tough to hit for power when you have the problems that he was having. I mean, he had a giant knot on his wrist. It just wasn't a good situation. And so he had surgery. Like we talked about, Betts not having it. Bregman did have it. And so he had corrective surgery to get that resolved. Plus, then he had the strained quad as well. So it affected his ability to run on base, to steal bases. So he just really had a down year. But if you're a power hitter who doesn't have your strong wrist and doesn't have a strong base because you've got an injury, it's gonna be what happened to him last year. And so when I look at his price, I mean, he's easily been a top 50 player the last couple of years coming into draft season. Now he's barely hanging in the top 100. I'd be all back in. And I know I'm not the only one. Paul Sporer talks about he really wants to get Bregman as well. But I'm not chasing him. But at the same time, if he's going to continue to fall as he is in some of these leagues, I would love to get another share of Bregman. He's a perfect share. He's a perfect fit for that ballpark. As long as he's playing with the Crawford boxes, he has his opportunities to hit with power. And he went the pick in front of me. I tell you, I was planning on taking him in the third pick of the 7th round, but he went to the team in front of me. I forget who's picked. That's Eric Karabell. So he went to Karabell in front of me. I took Varsho with the next pick, but I was all set to take Bregman with pick that would have been 97. No, 90. I'm sorry, 92. I was all set to take him right there.
Todd, where are you on Bregman?
Out. I've been out. I'm going to stay out. Okay. And Jason alluded to it. He's staying in Minute Maid Park, so he will continue to hit for power. But he needs his exit velocity and fly balls is low, and to me, it's just, I don't need the what I don't want to have to rely on Crawford boxes. I want a guy who can hit for power. But even if it comes back, he's not stealing the bases again. So to get to your lofty rank, Jason, he's going to need 5 steals. He's going to need a handful of steals, I think, and I don't see them.
Or he's going to have to hit a bunch of homers. I mean, he's going to have to excel in one of these areas.
Well, all right. I think the power's coming back. I don't think he had 41 in the happy ball year. It's no coincidence because you need the extra boost helped him. So the power can come back. He could hit 30 homers, but I still think he needs a few more steals. Can he hit 40? If he hits 40 homers, okay. So I agree. The power comes back. Does it come back to 35 homers? Okay. He wins, or those 5 extra steals. So,
and the next piece, the next guy on the list though is Anthony Rendon. Another big question, same position, that basically on the ADP. That's the next guy, and so we have question marks with him as well. And third base is a very interesting position this year.
Yeah, also, I'm on Rendon. The irony is I'm on Rendon, but I'm trying to get a backup. We talked to Clay about it. I want Luis Urias as my backup because he can then back up other places. Right. You don't pick Rendon in a vacuum. Your corner almost has to be a third baseman.
Nice. By the way, Phil Maton, a deep league reliever that you spotlighted, Jason, that definitely should keep an eye on. I think I had him in labor last year briefly, but I do like Phil Maton's skills. And then with the Angels, you make a good point that Michael Lorenzen, go Reds. I mean, they already guaranteed a rotation spot for Michael Lorenzen, probably a part of a 6-man rotation, wouldn't you say? But this seems like a bet on yourself, like rehab deal where Michael Lorenzen said, they kind of switched my roles in Cincinnati. I'm a starting pitcher and I'm going to prove it.
Yeah. And he wanted to be a starter. Body has failed him a couple of times, which, I've said elsewhere, it's unusual because he is in such good shape. Just a big dude, really takes care of himself. And so you worry, that actually should, in theory, ease some of the concerns. Like, can he make the transition from reliever to that? One of the guys I always go back to is when CJ Wilson, the first year he became a starting pitcher, he started training to become a starter the day after the previous season ended, because the Rangers told him, you're moving to the rotation. And so he went from relieving 76 games to pitching 150 something innings the following season, if memory serves me correctly. And so with Lorenzen, he has previously shown the stuff. And I put this in the article, like there are times when the breaking stuff has been amazing. There's time when the changeup has worked, and there's times when the cutter, but all of it in the same season has never worked out well together. But he hasn't, in all fairness, had the opportunity to do that. And so I am very intrigued with the fact that the Angels signed him and said, you're coming here to be a starting pitcher. And the fact that he is in that if they do a 6-man rotation again, gives him a little bit more insulation to take care of himself. But another guy who, again, is going in the reserves. Nobody's really taking him in the starting. And I'm intrigued by what he's able to do. I took him in the 49th round. Of one league, and I think I had to take him earlier here in our writers league just because the starting pitching depth has been running away from us. And I took him in the 33rd round, 33.3 there. But that's the way that league's running, because Jeff Zimmerman took all the pitching. But I'm very intrigued with what Lorenzen can do. He's a guy that so far I have in all 3 of the leagues I've completed.
He's probably they'll allow him to catch his own pop-ups too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame we're going to have a universal DH. He may hit. I mean, they got 2 of the best hitting pitchers on the same team.
Yeah, I had fun watching him, and he really did show flashes of being dominant on the mound. Of course, it was fun to see him in the field as well and hitting some homers, but I do think there's another level to come for him as a pitcher.
Wasn't at one point he the top fielding center fielder?
Yeah,
on the
he was
Reds?
the best center fielder for a while.
That says that's more of an indictment of the team than a plot. It's for the player.
Yeah, but it speaks to how great of an athlete he is.
Exactly.
Now in Oakland, Jason, you like Matt Chapman to be a top 10 third baseman. That may not be in Oakland though.
And that bakes into the prediction too.
Yeah.
Between Chapman and Olsen, the Mats may be somewhere else, maybe on somebody else's doorstep. But that's really the thing with him. He was dealing with some injuries last year too. I know he's got a hole in his swing with velocity up. But really what that created was another hole in his swing on breaking stuff away too. And I put some of that in the article with that. But you look at put some of the other stuff in. It talks about some of his in-zone contact rate and where he ranks with some guys. And his swing and miss rate is on par with guys like Albies and Swanson and Riley and Haniger and Stanton. Like he's in a good crowd, but the results were not there. And he's previously had the results, and he was on an upward trend with everything. And then last year it kind of fell apart for him. And so I want to, when I looked at it, I doubt he's going to finish the season in Oakland. He could go somewhere else. And perhaps that change of environment where he's back into being in a place has a realistic shot at playing in the postseason. Whereas it felt like all last year that Oakland was just getting ready to drop off and fade off, and let's try to do something else. But we're only 2 years removed from him having elite StatCast rankings in just about every offensive category. And now he's, where he's being drafted. We mentioned earlier about the third base position, and now he's outside the top 200 by ADP. It's prime target for me.
Now, behind the curtain a little bit, I don't get to edit every single article for the site, but I have gotten to edit most of these. And I texted you after I posted this about the Brent Honeywell bold prediction because I liked it. You may forget about Honeywell, but he was a top prospect in the game before he got hurt. More injuries after that in Tampa Bay, but now he's kind of in a land of opportunity here. Most people seem to expect Lou Trevino to be gone, and maybe Honeywell could find his way into a combined 10 saves plus wins.
Man, it would be awesome if he could do what we saw at the AFL. What was that, 2018 we saw him pitch? I don't know if after all the surgeries, if he's ever going to be the same guy with the screwball and all of that stuff. He's now out of options. So he has the opportunity, but this isn't, this same team last year, 7 weeks into the season, Yusmeiro Petit had 7 wins in relief for this club, because that's how they were using him every single day. Maybe they bring him back as a free agent, but it wasn't that long ago that he was out there and just picking up decisions. And so this should be the land of opportunity, as you were saying with Honeywell. There's nothing that's nailed down.
Well, you said it, and then I copied you.
Okay, I forget exactly, but there's been a lot of talk about AJ Puck possibly becoming a late inning reliever, which given his injuries and everything, and that certainly would make a ton of sense. But for me, Honeywell is just freely sitting out there in these draft champion and DC 50 formats, where I want to give him a shot, because the fact that he's out of options means he's going to hang around until his body or his production says he doesn't belong in the major leagues anymore. So it's a good opportunity for him. Todd?
He was throwing the screwball, because I just love watching him pitch. It's just so fun. Mm-hmm. It's just so unique. We saw him at the AFL. He was throwing it after the second procedure, but whether it's effective or he can continue to throw it or not, I don't know. But he still was. He didn't remove it from his arsenal, which is at least encouraging.
Yeah.
Jason, I think you said, or you called Oakland and their bullpen the land of opportunity in a text, I think, and then I stole it from you before you had a chance to say it on the show. But no, that's exactly what it is. And they seem to be embracing a teardown, so maybe even more so the land of opportunity come opening day. Now in Seattle, you kind of like Andrew Heaney, by the way, in LA is this year's Robbie Ray, but in Seattle, you don't like Robbie Ray in 2022. You're just kind of off given his track record.
Yeah, I don't like this year's Robbie Ray because, and again, when you have the type of season he has, there's only one way to go, and it's down. And I tweeted a comp out a couple of weeks ago saying that 2018 Blake Snell and the 2021 Robbie Ray, what 2019 Blake Snell is the 2022 Robbie Ray. A lot of similarities with the leftiness, the big breaking ball, the fastball, the overall problems with command, and like in that Cy Young year for both guys, everything came together. And then as quickly as it all came together for Snell, it went away, and nobody understood where did it go? Because the same team, same pitching coach, all the conditions were there, but he fell back into things. And with Robbie Ray, if it happens, that's where it could go wrong. But then you look at some of the guys. When I looked at something as simple as his left on base percentage, he had the highest of any starting pitcher.
90.1, something
90.1. Nobody else has been that high. Justin Verlander was next at 88, and he got hurt the next year. And then Blake Snell in his magical year went from 88 to 72, and his ERA jumped 2.5 runs. It's so the history of starting pitchers that stranded that many base runners is not great. But I just can't get the Blake Snell the year after Cy Young effect out of my head with Robbie Ray, because the similarities really line up well with those two. Also throwing in hey, I just signed a big contract and I'm moving out to a new market. Great. Glenn Colton and Rick Wolf talk about that all the time as part of their process. There's a lot of conditions, and that's one I cannot get on board with Robbie Ray. He is. We talked about Betts earlier. Betts is not dead to me. Robbie Ray, I want no part of.
It's so tough, because how did he get better? He got better by throwing the ball down the middle and letting his natural movement take care of things.
Oh, and turning his you see the interview where he's turning his fastball like the commissioner's signature is on one half the horseshoe. I thought that was pretty cool. But
that was that was because of the easier recognition and changing it versus righties and lefties. Yeah, that was fascinating. This is the kind of stuff we learn when there's nothing else to talk about going through Twitter. But I think it was smart what he did, but is that a sustainable, avenue to success?
Right.
Throw it down the middle and hope it moves. I like him better than I did coming into the season, but you have to regress the walk rate some and see where it lands. But the prognosticator is still a little high on him, but the drafter is going to pass.
Moving on now to the Central divisions, the NL Central. Clint Fraser now with the Cubs, and you like him, bold call, but to maybe finish as a top 75 outfielder. I was glad to land him in this draft. I probably sniped you, but I was
You did.
I was glad that I got him before you did, Jason.
You did. That's another land
2020 was not that long ago, and he had a great 2020.
Yeah. Well, it's another land of opportunity thing. You mentioned earlier about the whole city of New York being on Andrew Heaney. That would apply to Clint Fraser as well. And this came out after I wrote this, but the whole thing, the post concussion issues he said he was having with the neurological after he ran into the wall, that came out. So it's like, to me, this is a change of scenery thing where, a few years ago, everybody loved this guy. Everybody loved this guy. And now he's got an opportunity to reestablish himself in the land of opportunity, which is the rebuilding Cubs. And so I absolutely would have taken him the round that you did with that, because again, sometimes we God isn't produced enough. Okay, we move on, but he's still young too. It's not like he's a 30-year-old guy. So I really want to see what he can do. And again, this was the team last year that gave Frank Schwindel and Patrick Wisdom all the opportunity they wanted, and they both produced in two different ways. Wisdom striking out an amazing amount, but doing his home runs, and then Schwindel replicating what he had done as a AAA player. So I'm very intrigued to see what Fraser can do with Chicago, and I'm on board.
Yeah, he was, again, it was a short season, but he was the Yankees' third best position player by WRC plus in 2020. And I still think there's an opportunity there because he never really got turned loose. He's 27, and it just seemed like they just were reluctant to ever really,
Well, it was defense too. And I know he got a little better defensively, but now with the DH, potentially maybe he has a spot. Jason, did you make the initial call before or after? I'm just more curious. It doesn't matter. But did you make the call before the DH or after?
I made the call assuming the DH was going to be there. I have been an optimist. I've been an optimist saying it was always going to be there. But I've been saying this for a year and a half now, so I'm glad it's finally going to be here.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, yeah.
Well, some people drafted Rowan Wick, but you like Cody Hoyer to lead the Cubs in saves.
I do, and Cody Hoyer is the reason why I learned about this doing the research for this. But Cody Hoyer is the reason why Craig Kimbrell went to the White Sox and not Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay really wanted him, and then the White Sox were like, "Hey, we'll add Hoyer to the deal." Okay, and so Hoyer's interesting because his non-fastballs are really, really good. The fastball was problematic, but the Cubs, as soon as he got to their organization, they were like, "Hey, we need you to do this. Stop doing this. Do this." And so there was an adjustment period with him. And you could see where he wasn't trying to throw it as hard, but they wanted him to use his sinker as a sinker. And try to get some more up down to the way he was throwing his pitches, because it was really weird how he was using his fastball with the White Sox. But he's like one of these guys to me is like one skill away, where he could take if this fastball rework sticks, then all of a sudden he's got three really good pitches. And you go watch some video of him. It's workable. You could see this playing out in a very high leverage closer role. And so Wick, it's like, if you're looking at the way the closer market is so unsettled, this is one of these things where I would love to get more shares of Hoyer than I currently have. I keep thinking, I'll be able to get him next round. And then somebody grabs him. And it annoys me because somebody grabbed him, and I have him in one league, but he went right in front of you, Clay. Whoever's team 12 took him in the 29th round.
He doesn't give up homers, does he? He just
Erickson.
He just doesn't give up home runs, Hoyer.
Yeah, he's just pretty darn exciting arm, and definitely not a guy to forget in your drafts. Now, when I was talking with James on the prospect pod on Wednesday, I told him about the 4 Brewers I had drafted in this league: Willian Thomas, Luis Urias, Aaron Ashby, and then Eric Lauer as well. So I said, hey, go Brewers, I guess. I guess I'm on the Brewers train. And you kind of, between your outlooks for the site and then this article, and you just beating this drum about road Willie versus home Willie during his days with Tampa Bay, you've really sold me over the past year or so on Willian Thomas.
He was, for people that don't know, he hated hitting in Tropicana Field, and he was outspoken about it. They changed the lights in 2019. And it never worked for him. And some people said, oh, it's maybe in his head, but the results speak for themselves. He hit 192 at home and 306 everywhere else. And that's not the quality. Sometimes you look at home road splits, it's like, who are they facing? He just did not enjoy hitting. So as soon as the trade happened last year in May, I was telling everybody, go pick up Road Willie. In one of my home leagues, like if you spend over $25 in FAB, you have to keep the guy the next year. I was co-owning a team. I told the guys, like, spend the $25. This is absolutely going to be worth it. And so, like, we've got to keep him at 25 this year, but it's worth it. So he has been able to hit everywhere else but Tropicana Field. And so now he gets to stay. Hopefully he can stay healthy, because honestly, he was having an MVP caliber season until he got hurt there down the stretch once he made his way over to the National League. And so he gets to go back there. He's got the rebuilding Cubs staff. He's got the Pirates he gets to face a lot of, your Reds. There's an opportunity for him to do some more damage over the full season here. And shortstop's a deep position. So it sounds like, this guy was really good. Saying he's top 10 is not that bold, but shortstop's got a lot of depth to it. So for him to take this leap, he's going to have to put in some work at the plate to make it happen.
Yeah, that position is stacked. But really, when he came over to Milwaukee, he was like an MVP caliber player. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of that defensively was great too, but he just took off at the plate. So
I'm happy for the guy. I really wish his trade obviously facilitated Franco coming up, but it was frustrating to watch Thomas try to hit a home because he just couldn't do it. He'd be in between pitches. You'd see him take it. Like, what are you taking that for? But just his pitch recognition home just didn't work.
Now, between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, do you have any long shots that you like as flyers and drafts?
So on Pittsburgh, I've taken Miguel Yajure in 2 leagues so far. I liked what I saw from Yajure as a minor leaguer, when he initially came up with the Yankees. Then he got hurt with Pittsburgh, but he's got really good breaking stuff. I'm intrigued enough to take a dart on him in late leagues. I'm giving Anthony Alford one more chance with his athleticism, because he came up as a football player. But we saw him in the AFL. We could see what the athleticism does, and Pittsburgh definitely is a land of opportunity. Want to see how that goes. Honestly, Cincinnati was tough because there wasn't a lot to try to predict. I looked at Jose Barrero. I talked about the depth at shortstop, but looking for him because he's been really good in the minors, but he's been completely impatient at the major league level, swinging at everything. Got to chill out. And then Luis Cessa, I mentioned Yusmeiro Petit earlier. That's kind of how I envision Luis Cessa performing for Cincinnati. They've got the quantity of arms in the back. They've got Lucas Sims, they've got Art Warren. But it's like, for me, I see Cessa as that guy coming in and vulturing some wins, maybe getting a save here or there. But he's got the opportunity. He's not a single inning guy. He can work the multiple innings. And that's where Petit had his value too. That kept him in for some of those wins. So Cessa's a guy that I've been looking at in NL only or the draft and hold type of leagues, looking for some decisions in that route.
Yeah, I've been critical of the Reds and their moves, but I thought the move to get Cessa was a great call. I could definitely see him being a valuable, maybe not like a swing man exactly, but filling multiple roles as needed. Before we move on to the AL Central, I'll bring you a few quick words from our sponsors. Hope you'll bear with me here, and then we will wrap things up with Jason. WynnBET is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcast. WynnBET brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, money line bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WynnBET's digital casino and take a spin on roulette. Double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WynnBET is currently available in 9 states: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WynnBET, the possibilities are limitless. Register for WynnBET today. Make a qualifying deposit and wager to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WynnBET now. That's WYNNBET. WynnBET, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. And also experience a new way to play daily fantasy sports on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is an exciting player prop fantasy contest With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up for Thrive Fantasy today and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. Here's how you can claim that free RotoWire sub. Visit rotowire.com/thrive. Deposit a minimum of $10 and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. Then finally play in your first paid contest and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. So, Jason, I don't think we're going to get through all 6 divisions here, but as we move on to our 4th one, the AL Central, I've seen Dylan Cease get a lot of helium, and you're kind of driving that train. You see him as a top 15 pitcher potentially. So what exactly do you like and see being the key to unlock the next level with Dylan Cease?
So I guess I'm like the anti-Nick Pollock, because Nick Pollock's been the anchor, dragging him down. And what I like out of Cease is the ability to separate the fantasy pitcher from the real pitcher. And the fantasy side of things, he plays for a team that should provide him with plenty of run support if everybody stays healthy. So you have that particular option. You've got a really good bullpen behind him. His ability to collect strikeouts. And so that's where I'd like for him to, like last year, we saw these kinds of things with Julio Urias, but every year there's a pitcher that has the right conditions that takes that big step forward. Hell, Steven Matz had that last year. He had the best run support in the American League, and he was able to get some strikeouts and was able to get a bunch of wins from that. And so that's really why I like Cease, is just all those conditions, his ability to get strikeouts as well. And if he can find some more consistent command, he could take another leap forward from that. And so, like, I hear Nick's arguments about that his command's inconsistent, and I agree with that. But if all the other things are in place, and he's like that one skill away, and even last year he was really good. And to consider where he was last year, I bought him for $4 in AL Tout. And he ended up being my ace. Last year, nobody liked him. He took this big step forward, but I believe there's even more growth there for him.
When he comes up in drafts, I never really that close, because I do have it in my head that when he came up, the command was so wildly inconsistent. But I mean, the whiff rates that you mentioned here, 3 offerings with a 40% whiff rate. Oh man, he could be pretty good. I mean, he was a top prospect despite those command issues when he came up. So if he could just take another step forward in that regard, he really could be nasty. And then Eloy Jimenez is a top 30 player. I could totally see that. Anything you want to add about Eloy?
He has to mash. As we were talking about Bregman, he's not going to run, so he has to mash to make this happen. But when you look at the lineup he's going to be in, if everybody's healthy and he's going to hit high in that lineup and in that ballpark, he has the opportunity to do this if he can play to his potential. And I saw him here in Charlotte. The good news is the White Sox have a lot of farm systems in North Carolina, so I'm able to see him, and he just laid waste on his way up to Chicago. Then he got hurt doing that stupid stuff on the fly ball. So let's get him back in the lineup and breaking to his potential.
Yeah, don't do any hanging like Vince Carter.
That's exactly what
elbow
it was.
hang dunks from the outfield fence. Before we get your thoughts on him, Jason, I want to run Tristan McKenzie by Todd. Todd, do you have any strong feelings about Tristan McKenzie, the Guardians, one way or another, or not really?
No.
Okay, Doug.
I like. I gotta make sure my mic's still on here. Had it down. There was noise going on. Didn't want the interference. I like McKenzie. I have the same concerns that everybody does about the sleight of build in the control. Cleveland, the Guardians, they're doing good things with their pitchers. McKenzie was a different pitcher when he came up after the minor leagues. So they're also doing it in the minor league level. It's just, we talked about it with Snell. We talked about it with Ray. Can he maintain a game that he showed for a month? So you don't have to invest nearly as much, obviously, on McKenzie that you do on a Snell or a Ray to find out. But I definitely think it's worth finding out. The Cleveland has earned our trust, I believe, to find out.
And Jason, you like him quite a bit, and you kind of laid out some qualifications that kind of put him in some pretty exclusive company last year, McKenzie.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Darvish, about with Gilbert and Zola. McKenzie and Darvish as those four guys. But with McKenzie and, as Todd said, Cleveland and Milwaukee are two places that are just doing magic with pitching. With McKenzie, it just comes down to him staying ahead of batters. And this is, young pitchers are like this. They fall behind, they go back to their fastball. And McKenzie's got a good fastball, but when the league knows it's coming, they're going to hit it out. And they hit 16 of the 21 home runs he allowed came off his fastball, because his breaking stuff, the league had a collective $123 off it. He's got 40+% whiff rate on both of his breaking balls. But when he falls behind in counts, because his command is so inconsistent, he just goes back to fastball, and the league starts hunting for it. And he's in that one skill away group where if he can get better fastball command and get ahead in the account, because the numbers lay it out. When the batters are ahead, they hit 264 off him and slug 519. When he's ahead, they hit $130 and they slug 243 off him. Get ahead, get to the high ground first, and then you can do what you want with Anakin there. So that's what he's got to do. He's just got to get ahead and leverage his breaking stuff, because he makes those breaking pitches look like strikes as long as possible. And hitters have a very tough time of laying off it when they're down in the count. When they're up in the count, they're hunting fastball because that's what he's throwing.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it in your Scrap Heap article too, which, by the way, if you're listening, you can go back and check that out, archived on the site. But the ERA for McKenzie was the highest among all pitchers last season, with at least 100 innings, at least a 25% strikeout rate, less than a 250 opponent's average, and a 120 whip or lower. So it seemed like things were, working against him a little bit, and he was a bit unlucky. I do see him pitch, and I'm like, man, I wish I could just trade him 50 pounds, just give him a cool 50 off the top, because he's so skinny, and I worry about him.
I'll say you're 50 and raise you 25 more.
Yeah, can't we just send him in the mail good 75 pounds? But no, it looks like he could use a little bit more bulk on that body to hold up long term. That's just the most obvious thing with my two eyes that I see with McKenzie that kind of scares me. Erod over in Detroit, you like him as a top 100 guy leaving Boston?
I do like him out of Fenway. Yeah, I do like him out of Fenway. I know we talked earlier about the big contract, new places type of thing, but I really do love him out of Fenway and putting him in Comerica with the friendlier environment there. He had probably one of the more notable COVID recovery cases in Major League Baseball, where it really took a beating on him, and it took him a while to recover from it. But as he found his groove later on last year, I really liked what I saw from him. Historically, the one thing you got to worry about is that knee. He's always had some problem with his knee there, but I just like getting him out of Fenway and his ability to. I like how he pitches, because he's not trying to blow it by everybody and overpower people. I mean, he will add and subtract off his pitches, move them in, move them out. I really do enjoy his approach to pitching, and I really want to see how it's going to play out well in Detroit. But he is a guy that has been on my really, really want list.
You're right about that knee, although I think it was his plant leg. But I feel like since he had surgery a few years ago, it hasn't been nearly as big of an issue. So, yeah, he's creating distance anyway from those past knee issues. And it did seem like Alex Cora always kind of like had him under his thumb a little bit. Like he was kind of holding him down a little bit.
Well, there were some other times they'd leave him out there too long.
No, it was the opposite. Clay, it was it was tough love. He would,
tough love, okay.
I would be lifting you. I would lift anybody else after 5 2/3, but you're pitching me 6. I don't care what happens. And I think it helped him. And I think it helped him.
Okay. Yeah, I remember there was some
surgery.
Kind of
the knee should be over. I mean, he should be fine with the knee.
Mm-hmm. Now, on to Kansas City here. This was kind of the other one with, among the cream of the crop in the player pool that kind of shook me a little bit. Whit Merrifield, not a top 60 player. I haven't really been on him in past years, but he's been pretty darn good. But you see maybe the downward slope beginning, or maybe it's already begun.
Well, and it's not really a performance thing. It's just that he has produced an incredible amount just by the volume of playing time that he's put out there. He's never spent a day on the injury list in baseball. that eventually has to catch up with somebody. You just can't, unless, I mean, even Cal Ripken should have gone on the injury list a few times during his streak, but nobody's ever done that. And just the volume of playing time that he's done, then I laid it out because Merrifield turns 33 this year. And I looked through the players that say, okay, if you're a 33-year-old, how many times have you been able to do that? And repeating back-to-back seasons, repeating that level, doesn't happen that often. And I think when I looked at it, Orlando Cabrera was one of the names. There just wasn't. Only 15 players in the past 25 years have had 700 plate appearances at that age. And the last time we saw that was Joey Votto in 2017. So nobody in 18, nobody in 19, nobody in 2021 at that age had more than 700 plate appearances. So that's where I'm trying to get back to. Every year we look at a guy that went in the first 3 rounds that failed to meet expectations. The conditions based on these types of things are there for Merrifield to be one of those guys. He could also come back out and do another 720 plate appearances and say, well, I'm Wolverine. This is what I do. I just regenerate and I don't need to go on the injured list. But to me, it's like he's been able to outrun, or keep himself distanced from the same trouble that hits everybody else. And I just could, if he gets hurt this year, it'd be like, it's just the odds catching up with him. And if he gets hurt, as a guy whose game is primarily built on his ability to run the bases, and because he doesn't make a lot of, he sprays the ball all over the place. He doesn't make a lot of hard contact anymore these days, but his game's built on speed. And if he has a lower half injury, it could significantly impact his value.
Yeah, good word of warning on Whit Merrifield if you're considering taking him with an early pick. When we had Jeff Zimmerman on the show on MLB Network Radio a few weeks ago, we talked to him about pitchers who split their time between starting and relieving last year, and there weren't many that he was really on. I feel like, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I feel like he was not really optimistic about Carlos Hernandez of Kansas City. But you actually think he has a chance to be mixed league relevant?
Yeah, he's a tough guy to figure out, honestly, because he was rather dominant with his strikeout rate as a reliever, rather, wasn't so much as a starter. So the numbers kind of are a little different. You look at the strikeout minus walk rate as a starter, it wasn't great. But this comes back to one of those things where I watched him pitch a few times late because I had picked him up in 2 leagues and watched him pitch. So I was tuned into his games, and what I saw was better than what these numbers put out. And one of the things that really played out is when I looked at the StatCast profile, the pitchers that come up as his similars with velocity and movement are Drew Rasmussen, Oscar Anoa, and Brandon Woodruff. And I like all 3 of those guys. And I honestly have the same problem trying to label Drew Rasmussen as well. Because I see a guy that's like, hey, I'm throwing 2 pitches. But what I love about Rasmussen is how he just attacks the strike zone and forces batters to swing, because then they get down in the count, and it gets what we were talking about with McKenzie earlier on. So, for me, Hernandez at his price, again, he's outside the top 400 in ADP. I'm willing to take a chance on the stuff to see what's going to happen as a next step. But when your velocity and movement are coming up with 3 other guys that I really like, I'm going to take a chance. I'm not going to fade that just because his strikeout minus walk rate was a single digit number as a starting pitcher. I'll give it another chance. If it stinks at that price, I'll move on.
Absolutely. Todd, did you have something you were going to add, or did I misinterpret that?
No, I was thinking more. This is a completely different discussion for another day. But I've been thinking about, these 2 pitch pitchers, and when you can locate the pitches, I mean, it's the same pitch, but if you can throw it high and you can throw it low, it's 2 different pitches.
Yeah.
So that's when I see a starter with 2 pitches, I like to dig deeper and see where they're locating, because it's a different pitch at a different eye level. So some of these guys, some guys just throw it down the middle and see what happens, but some of these effective starters, if they have excellent pinpoint location, yeah, it's 2 pitches, but it has the effect of more.
Oh, and in theory, Hernandez actually has a handful of pitches. But as Jeff Zimmerman tweeted out earlier, he had like this whole decision graph. Do you throw 4 pitches? Yes or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Are you Darvish? Yes. Okay, continue. If not, stop throwing your crappy pitches. So maybe it gets to a point where Hernandez is like, okay, focus on these. But he does have 5 pitches, and he will throw them all. But again, Yu Darvish is one of the guys that could all throw 5 quality, but that's really the tough part. But that's why I want to take another chance with Hernandez to give him a full chance, because he's got the velocity. He does have a diverse array of pitching, and if he can get 3 of them to work really well, but he's got 5 that he can use every now and then, I'm intrigued, and I want to see what Kansas City can get out of him as a full year as a starting pitcher.
Well, we'll wrap up today's conversation with Minnesota, meaning we won't get to the final 2 articles, but of course you can check those out for yourself on the site. Again, rotowire.com/try for 10 days on us. And
That's the exit music.
No, that was my phone. It's all good.
Nice. Well, sorry.
No, keep going.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank you, Todd, for bearing with us. I know you're not feeling the greatest today, but thank you for making the show, and thank you, Jason, for taking time. Minnesota, Luis Arraez is a top 20 second baseman. Doesn't have that kind of category juice, to paraphrase Scott Pianowski, or I guess just quote Scott Pianowski, because he made up.
Just say it. Plagiarize.
Plagiarize. That's a good one. But yeah, I think I believe he made up the term.
Yeah, that's where I've heard it.
Category juice. But what he lacks there, he makes up for with bat to ball, right, Jason?
That's right. And when you look at, I put him down as a top 20 second baseman because on paper, as we're looking at the depth charts today, he's projected to hit leadoff in front of that Minnesota lineup that has some nice offensive potential in the top half of it. So he's set up to hit leadoff. He doesn't steal bases, but he does get on base because he can put himself on base. He knows how to walk, but he can hit the ball to all fields. And he's got a .313 career batting average. So he can get himself on base, and it does that. And he's got enough speed where he can score from first on the double type of thing. He just doesn't want to steal bases. And why should he with what they've got behind him? But he's got a career .374 on base percentage. So the opportunities should be there. And if you're trying to build your roster out and you take chances on certain players, like I've taken a chance on Joey Gallo, I believe, in our AFL Writers League. I also drafted Arraez because you have to be able to, if you're gonna target a guy like Arraez and his lack of power, then you have to be able to make up for it elsewhere. And I believe in this league I have Gallo and Stanton. I forget exactly, but one of the leagues I have, it's like if you're doing that, you got to take a Arraez or take a chance on Michael Brantley, who's got the highest batting average over the last 4 years of any player. It really comes down to, if you want this guy late, you got to plan for him kind of early. And everybody else in your league probably gets a good feel for that. Like, oh, you took Gallo, or you're taking Gallo and Dahlbeck, or Dahlbeck and Sanchez. You gotta have to, then they know that you're going to be taking this guy. So in a draft, you may have to take them around earlier than you want. In an auction, you may have to pay for them to do that, because it's rather obvious how you're putting your the team together, unless you're just going to punt average, like in an auction case. In NFBC, where you got to do the balance, you're more forced into that issue. But if you're in a home league or something and you decide I'm just going to punt average, then you don't have to worry about that. But I love the opportunity for Arraez to far exceed his projections, because if he can stay at the top of that lineup and get on base as he has historically, he has the opportunity of putting up a lot of runs this year.
Yeah, he puts a power strain on your roster, but if you have the right roster construction, yeah, Luis Arraez could be a great fit. And then finally, I like this deep pull to lead the Twins in saves. Your bold prediction on the pitching side for them is that Jorge Alcala leads the team in saves. He's got your endorsement. He's got Ryan Roof's endorsement, and you guys are making Jorge Alcala one of my kind of priority endgame targets.
It was, and what I really like about him, and shocker, he developed new pitches last year, and he did it in season. That was the crazy thing. Like he came to camp saying, I'm going to work on a changeup, but then he actually shelved it. Then he brought it back, and then he started throwing a sinker. So all of a sudden, he's got 4 pitches. And his overall numbers look like crap, because he gave up 9 home runs in the first half of the season. And then he allowed 1 the rest of the way. And so he became tougher to hit, tougher to square up, because he's throwing 4 pitches. And this is this isn't any kind of disrespect to Taylor Rogers, but there were trade rumors with him last year that they were considering trading him. And so what's to say they don't consider trading him this year onto that point and trying to maximize the value of closer, because he's not a kid. And so maybe they take advantage of that, and there's the opportunity for him to do so. But then just a couple of years ago, Rogers saves 30, and then he wasn't the primary closer the next year. He had a couple of bumps, and he wasn't the primary guy then. So if I'm a Rogers guy and I can get Alcala in the reserves, I want to do that. Or if I'm light on saves, I took Alcala in our AFL Writers League, because Lou Trevino is on paper my third closer. So I need to look for other options. And Alcala is one of the guys I have been targeting. I have him in all 3 leagues that I've completed thus far, at least gone through 25 rounds. I have him in all 3 of the leagues because I really like the skills and his potential to do to be rather effective in the back of that Minnesota bullpen in either role. I want him to get the saves based on how I'm putting together the roster, but he's got really good stuff.
Yeah, I like that call because, as you pointed out, Rogers finished 3rd on the Twins in saves last year behind righties Colome and Hansel Robles. Not two stellar arms by any means, and I think there is a pretty big trade market for Taylor Rogers. I think one of the teams closer to competing in the AL would love to have that lefty at the back end, and that could create an opportunity for Alcala. Really good stuff. Jason, thanks again. Anything else on your mind today? Anything else you want to share with the listeners?
No, nothing else. I need to, reach out if you want any specific article topics. Now that I'm out of the bold prediction series, I want to get into some more specific stuff. I think this weekend, after a conversation with Ryan, I wanted to talk because he had his closer piece up, and he had said something about Corey Knebel, and I said, I view Corey Knebel as this year's Rafael Iglesias. Last year, Iglesias was being faded on the market. I picked up Iglesias in multiple places. He had a great year, and he has a lot of similar profile flaws that Knebel has coming into this year, and that reflects in Knebel's market value right now. But I believe that Knebel has an opportunity to take that step forward. We look back and wow, where did this come from? The conditions are there as long as Knebel's body doesn't fail him. So I believe that's going to be my article topic this weekend, is to flesh out that conversation that Ryan and I were having on Twitter about it, because the closer market, after the first 5 or 6, it's take your chances, and those prices aren't really settling down. They're only getting worse, and the only thing that's going to fix it is the lockout ending and teams making some acquisitions.
Yeah, I'm hoping, a pie in the sky, but maybe this time next week when we're talking, Todd, we'll be closer to an agreement. But anything else on your mind that you want to add, Todd?
And I'll be a week closer to my root canal. Yeah, I did a podcast this week for Fantasy Six Pack. If you go to Twitter on Fantasy Six Pack, it'll be there. It's on my account. It's a fun time. Joe Bond talking some NFBC, talking some first base and catcher. So if you didn't hear enough of me today, which you probably didn't, then we talked for an hour about it by design. It's all good. I talked to Joe and on fantasy6pack.com.
Awesome. Well, great stuff today, guys. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate you all joining us. Hope you'll do so again next Friday here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, sponsored by WynnBET.